is Norm Volsky, your host, and this is the Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast with your host, Norm Volsky. In our inaugural first interview series, I would love to be able to introduce the CEO of EHIR, Michael Laquere.
Hey, Norm. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. I guess you're starting.
Good. Thank you for joining us. I'm not sure I pronounced your last name correctly. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. And it's finally summer, right? You're in Minnesota. I'm in Cleveland. We're getting some sun rays. How about you?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely warming up. I'm excited.
Love it. Very, very good. So, we'll just jump in straight to the questions if you don't mind. First and foremost, would love to be able to understand, what inspired you to, join EHIR and, kind of talk to us about, how that began.
Yeah, happy to. So EHIR has been around for almost a decade now. Started in late 2013, had our first roundtable in spring of 2014. I was at Target. The founder is Josh Riff. So Josh Riff was the medical director at Target. I was on the healthcare team. We were colleagues. He started it it started off as a club. I'll say it was a grassroots effort. It was just getting a group of like-minded peers together, and that's what it to evaluate this emerging digital health space. Because if you go back 10 years ago, that was when digital health companies just first started calling on employers directly. I think Castlight might have been the first one. So remember that first meeting Josh took with Castlight at the Target headquarters. That was in 2013, I believe. So that was sort of the genesis of it. For me, I was leading the development of Target's enterprise well-being strategy, and my partner and I at the time, Cara McNulty, who's incredible. She's now leading behavioral health at Aetna. We teamed up and came up with a pretty bold idea to improve the health of the nation, and being able to link that ambition with the platform potential that we saw in the really early days of EHIR is what led me to dive in and convince Josh I should take it over and run it, as he went on to do other things. And so I was fortunately able to do so. Left Target 7 or 8 years ago, have been running it ever since. And certainly can't say we've been able to improve the health of the nation just yet, but I think we built a platform that can hopefully has the potential to make an impact.
We're getting there. What you guys have done is just amazing work. How close did you work with Josh over at Target?
Yeah, really closely. We were fortunate too. There's a lot of other folks here like Larry Leisure in the early days, Lee Shapiro, who are all still close advisors. So the network is incredibly important. As you know, it's a small industry. Those relationships matter. Those folks being able to open doors, the right doors. And what I'll say about Josh and me is we talk about this a lot. One, the power of the partnership. Has been incredible still to this day. And it was a bond that was really strengthened over a race in Leadville, Colorado. So if anyone's familiar, and I was there just to pace and help crew Josh, as well as actually a couple other healthcare founders. Noah Lang was there with us, and Josh and Sami Inkinen from Verda were the two that were actually running the race. This is a 100-mile race at altitude in the Rocky Mountains, tons of elevation. That was just an intense experience, incredible just to witness. But going through something like that really, really deepened. Just created a really deep connection, strengthened our bond for life as partners. That's been a huge, huge part of this.
That sounds great. 100-mile in the altitude race. I think I'd prefer to be someone looking and watching as opposed to participating. So.
Yeah,
it sounds way more enjoyable.
I don't know if I could do it myself.
I definitely couldn't. I can promise you that. How did you find your way into the benefits space? Can you kind of walk me through how you entered the market?
Yeah. Gosh, I stumbled my way in. Certainly wasn't intentional. My background's mechanical engineering. I'm from Michigan originally, from the Detroit area. So of course, naturally you get sucked into the automotive industry. So I did automotive engineering the first few years out of undergrad. Although I like to say, having a degree in engineering is basically just a degree in problem solving. So that's been super beneficial, great foundation. From there, I went into marketing actually. So I was in brand management, product marketing. And then from there, I got the call from Target, and that's when I moved to Minneapolis. Spent almost 10 years at Target in merchandising, rotating around. At the time, Target very much had a general athlete philosophy, and so I was fortunate to be able to rotate rather quickly into various positions, getting to run pretty big small businesses effectively as a buyer and a senior buyer, et cetera. So going from toys to electronics to household commodities, and then they threw me into healthcare. So didn't seek it out. I was offered the opportunity, jumped in, and just fell in love. So that's what it was for me. Just seeing and I think it's a common story I've heard from a lot of people who kind of come into healthcare. Just the complexity, the opportunity. And then, of course, most importantly, just the ability to actually impact people's lives. It's work that really matters, which just, for me was, created a ton of purpose and meaning. So just love the space. And then, as I said, from there was working on the development of Target's enterprise well-being strategy. So got deeper into it. And then, of course, through EHIR, just really fell in love with it.
I just wonder if, Target promoted you to that role. Did they just think you were the best negotiator, within the company? You worked your way up, maybe it's easier to, negotiate in the electronics market as opposed to healthcare, which I would imagine is the most complex.
Certainly not. Target has an incredible, I give Target a ton of credit. An incredible developer of talent, surrounded by amazing people that have all gone on to do awesome things. I was fortunate to have the career path that I did, and to be able to see the opportunity in EHIR and help, and then bring the right people together to help bring it to life.
Yeah, and when you were at Target, this was a decade ago, when you were on the benefits team, and talk to me about some of the biggest challenges you guys had as an employer and as, a payer at that point.
Oh gosh, well, I might, maybe I'll speak to this slightly differently, which is just as I think about the challenges I personally faced working in any large company. So nothing specific to Target. That's probably true of any big company. And that was something I struggled with my whole career, which is always kind of feeling that pull of entrepreneurship, right? Always feeling like I was an entrepreneur, I guess they call them. Just always kind of bumping up against walls like that, and feeling here. I guess I'll say it this way: like some of the things that frustrated me the most in a big company, and maybe why I ended up gravitating to this innovation and entrepreneurship space, is speed to action. What I call the strategy spin cycle. Just it's easy to get stuck in that swirl and not actually doing things right. Like, so I was sort of that was a big part of my frustration, is just wanting to move faster, wanting to just take some action, try. And so, there's just a corporate inertia and a fear of failure. And it's really easy to just continue to ask questions. And as I said, get stuck in that strategy spin cycle. And, you need 20 people to say yes, and you only need one person to say no. So that's, those were some of the things that inevitably led me to say, I want to go do something on my own in a smaller, more entrepreneurial setting. And then I absolutely loved it. So certainly the right decision for me. And again, being able to bring together the right scrappy team. We could move fast. In those early years, it was just a ton of fun.
Yeah, what you guys have built at EHIR is pretty incredible. They definitely picked the right person for the job. So in terms of, EHIR, you've been there 7-8 years. What are you most proud of, with what your organization has accomplished?
Oh gosh, where to begin?
I know there's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate. One, we've built, I think, an incredibly powerful just innovation discovery platform, and it's really fueled by our members and peer-to-peer insights. So we have, I believe, the world's best community of leading employers. It's an incredible member community. and it's expanded beyond EHR as well, right? We have an incredible network of payers now and providers. So, the three legs of the healthcare stool, and also really proud of the fact that we've been able to prove that this model can expand beyond healthcare. So in the last couple of years, we've really been spending time expanding this innovation model outside of the healthcare space into DE&I, legal tech, marketing tech, procurement tech, AI now. So super excited from a kind of scalability standpoint. And also, of course, just the fact that we've been, over almost a decade in, we've really stayed true to the mission, right? That's always been a really foundational part of this from the beginning. Our mission is simply to accelerate the pace of innovation and drive impact through action. And that remains very true to this day. So super proud of that. Also, I think very proud of the fact that we've, have a proven track record now of helping our members get early access to rising stars, to the future stars in the industry. And our members have proven to be catalysts for that growth, catalysts for innovation. Our very first roundtable was in, I think, February of 2014. And I go back and look at that list of who presented, the original list, that original cohort of founders that came in to present to that very first roundtable of EHIR, which was, at the time, we had only one cohort. So it's cohort one. We are now in the process of forming our sixth cohort, right? And those just have grown organically over time, right? But so back when we just had one cohort, when we first launched, that first group of founders that came through include companies like Wildflower, Big Health, Mequilibrium, Headspace, Omada, Jif, Ovia. Like they're all still around. They're all doing amazing things. They've scaled. Some have been acquired, and some are still growing strong and growing rapidly. And so it's just incredible to see from that standpoint how much of an impact those companies have been able to make, and then being able to say we had a small part in that. I feel really excited about and proud of. And then, of course, most importantly, the team. Like, we really have an incredible team. I think back about, I mentioned.
You really do. It's an incredible group of very talented people, but also just very good people. I think you guys have an amazing culture, and you guys attract not only the best and the brightest, but also just like good, down to earth, low ego, like people who actually are mission driven, which is super key.
Thank you. And one, I think it starts with the founding team. Like, I look back and feel so fortunate that the first 4 or 5 folks that we brought together, it was just the right mix, really incredible people, and they're all, and it's still intact, right? So here we all are today. That same team is intact, and we've grown, and we've added a ton of incredible talent on top of it. And we have, just such a stacked deck of rising stars now. And I know they're going to go on to do amazing things. So super proud of the team.
It's amazing. And that really resonated with me when you said, you're proud that a lot of the early companies, really benefited from it. And it was a small part of them, growing into market dominant companies. I feel the same way in my business. When I meet a company very, very early, and there's a handful that I met in the very, very early years that ended up being really successful. I'd say like Hinge is probably the best example of that. I met Gabriel and Dan through Jim Pursley at, Livongo at the time, when they were very early. I had never heard of them before. I didn't even know what musculoskeletal meant. I took the meeting as a favor to Jim. He said, "Hey, I'm helping a couple entrepreneurs." Met those two. They gave me their value prop. My jaw was on the floor within 5 to 10 minutes, just, seeing how talented that group is, and, how valuable what they were selling was. And, they had a handful of customers at the time, but just watching them scale has just been incredible. And probably one of the most proud things I am of the last 10 years in this business is helping a small part of those companies scaling by getting them, some of the right talent at the right time. So
exactly, I couldn't.
That's the rewarding stuff, is when you are, contributing to something, that really makes a difference.
Couldn't agree more. Do you remember the year? What year was it when you met Hinge? When you met Gabriel?
I would have to guess I met them 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, because they've scaled very quickly.
Well, that's
but
that's
they were
another good
small at the
example.
time. They maybe had,
So
one or two salespeople and maybe 30 people at the company.
yeah, so here just a couple more examples, right?
That's
Like
pretty cool.
so Livongo first presented to EHR in spring of 2016. Hinge first presented to EHR in spring of 2017. So I think that was
I probably met him right around that time, maybe a little after. So that's, it's fun to watch, when a
yeah.
company goes from small idea to, a company that helps hundreds, if not thousands of organizations across the country, manage chronic disease, which is pretty awesome. What is the biggest unexpected challenge you've experienced at EHIR over all these years?
Oh boy. Um, well, two big ones come to mind. We'll get personal for a minute. So in the early days, this is in July of 2018. So 5 years ago, almost exactly 5 years ago, we were we were a small team, small, really small shop at the time, just getting going. So really in a pretty, I don't know, delicate state, I will say, right? There was the original five of us. It was Josh, it was Sally, Katie, Sam, and me. And we had, so my wife and I had a almost 2 year old, and she just gave birth to our son. So new baby and a toddler and a startup, crazy time. And then my wife was diagnosed with a really rare form of cancer, and that just obviously huge shockwave. And it was, obviously took a ton of time and energy, and hard to focus on the business when you're going through something like that. Fortunately, she's now, I'm proud to say, happy to say, she's over 4 years cancer free.
Thank God.
She made it through it great, but it was, there was 6 months of pretty crazy times, and so that was a huge challenge. But I'll never forget, we had just had a roundtable where Grand Rounds came in and gave out a golden ticket. They called it. It was kind of like a free trial. It was a card they gave to each member. It was in a nice box. We gave one to each member, and it was, hey, if you're ever in need, you have an emergency, a family emergency, anything, just here's a kind of it was like a fast pass. Here's a cheat code to get direct access into Grand Rounds and leverage the service. And so I remember putting that card in my drawer. Everyone has that drawer in the kitchen with everything.
With your lawyer's number, your accountant's number, maybe your favorite executive recruiter's number. There's those couple people that are pretty crucial depending on your need.
Nice one. Yeah. Or the junk drawer in my case. So I put it in the drawer. I put it in the drawer. Didn't think much about it, but that that day right after the diagnosis, I remember picking up that card and using it, and that was incredible, right? So that was one real example of again, the power of the companies coming through, some of these amazing companies coming through EHR that we're excited to support, because this was a super rare form of cancer. So we wanted to get a second opinion. We wanted to understand, like, get to the right expert that actually had worked on cases, because there was such a small number of cases in the world for this type of cancer. And so that was tremendously valuable, but obviously huge challenge. And I remember basically setting up my office in the hospital with my wife as she was getting her chemo treatments, and running the business out of the hospital. I don't know if any of the providers really appreciated that as I'm walking around the halls taking phone calls, but I took many of those. And then, of course, credit to the team. They really stepped up and supported me tremendously, and it also, I think, really strengthened all of our bonds as a team. It really brought us together, and we were stronger for it. And so that was a big challenge. But again, something I look back on and say it was kind of a pivotal moment in our journey, and in some ways too. I mean, it was might sound bad to say, I don't know, but like I poured myself into EHIR and the team because it was a distraction that I needed, right? Just to keep, you know. Anyway, so that was certainly one. The other, of course, is the pandemic, right? Like this was
That's when we met each other.
Yeah, that was another crazy one. So now fast forward. So that was summer of 2018. Fast forward to March of 2020, and we were getting ready to host our very first ever summit for EHIR. We were going to bring, because you know our model, I just said we're anti-conference, and we wanted to keep it really intimate. Our members take turns hosting. We always said there was no more than 30 people at the table. That's it. And that's very intentional. That was kind of the sweet spot, one of the sweet spots of our model. And so roundtables meet, or our cohorts, we have a cohort model. So the cohort has no more than 20 member companies. We meet individually as cohorts. So we decided we were going to bring all of the members together, because at the time we had 3 cohorts. We were going to bring all 3 cohorts together and do a summit. MGM was going to host us. They're a member of EHIR, a wonderful member of EHIR. They're going to host us in Las Vegas. And this was going to be the week of March Madness 2020. And then, of course, global pandemic. And so I remember, as we're going through different contingency plans, again, still small, scrappy team, we're going through plan B, plan C, plan D. And then I remember watching the news one day when they canceled March Madness and Vegas is shutting down. I'm like, all right, that's it. We have to pull the plug. So we obviously had to pivot to virtual, as everyone did. But again, credit to our incredible team. They pivoted extremely well. And I know we got a ton of positive feedback from our members and innovators in the community about how well our team was able to pivot at that time and pull off some pretty great virtual events. That was also a wonderful opportunity to just kind of rise to the occasion, right? And the team stepped, and that drives innovation, right? Like we actually created some new products, new programming for our members. And one of the things we learned, right, is in times of crisis or uncertainty, when things are moving super fast, you need a trusted peer community more than ever. So our members really leaned in, and that was huge. And we were there to support our members, which was incredible. And I guess another thing I'm super proud of. And, one example is we started hosting what we called wine and popcorn sessions with our members. It was evening gatherings. We asked our members to bring their partners and spouses. And we actually brought in Josh's wife, Jen, who's incredible, and she's a therapist. And we actually did some almost group therapy. Because, these folks, think about it, benefits leaders, healthcare leaders at the time were bearing the weight, the burden of trying to figure out how to address and solve for this challenge. So, those like that's just one example where, we were able to, pivot and really make something special out of what was a crazy time.
I remember it. I was supposed to present out in Las Vegas, and I was in this very room with my note cards, like practicing with no one in here, like for hours. I'm almost glad I didn't have to do it, because I was terrified. It's a little easier to present virtually. Yeah. But I remember it, and you guys just did an amazing job of pivoting. I would argue, just from my perspective, I've seen sales cycles shorten in the benefits space, because no longer does a benefits leader need to meet someone in person to make a buying decision. Yeah. They're able to accelerate that process quite a bit by using virtual meetings as opposed to in-persons. Same thing with interviews as well. Like on my side of the house, as my clients have hired plenty of people over the last 4 years, and it's shortened the time to get really good talent in the door, because meeting someone in person isn't just as essential as it used to be to make either hiring decisions, buying decisions, whatever it may be. And going back to the story, with your family, first, I never knew that, so thank you for sharing. And second, I just think it's very interesting that one of the vendors that you were working with was willing to help and give a helping hand. And that's great. Credit to Owen Tripp and, those guys at Grand Rounds who are now Included Health. So just awesome how this space, really takes care of one another. as
Yeah.
well as, how they've grown, how the whole industry has grown, and them in particular have done well. And I'm sure like that's what makes this space so great and interesting, is at all points in our lives, every single one of us, we've had a situation
That's
where
right.
one of these solutions would be very helpful, if not multiple. Like just in your explanation right there, I would say, family planning companies, very relevant. You had two young kids, you had a wife who was sick. I'm sure you were bearing, a pretty big burden from a caregiving standpoint, both to your wife and your kids. I think caregiving could kind of fall in there. And then obviously, cancer treatment and second opinion market, like that fits. So like right there, 4 different spaces that you've
Yeah.
collaborated with, all shown value there. And that's why I love this space. That's what gets me up in the morning, Monday through Friday, is the companies we all work with and collaborate with every day are truly, improving people's lives and making
That's right.
this world a healthier place.
Exactly right.
What's the biggest mistake or thing you'd change over the last 7-8 years? Like, is there anything where you're like, man, we did get sidetracked for a bit, we got through it, but I would have done something differently, and we did have a little bit of a hiccup at one point in these 7-8 years?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, how much time do you have? There's nothing.
The question is how much time you have.
there is nothing perfect about this journey. I think of any. I mean, that's probably true of any, right? Any entrepreneurial journey, any startup, right? Like you're gonna, and frankly, that's one of the things that we talk about in our model, and we try to encourage for our members is to embrace failure and to learn from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an iterative approach to learning. You got to speed to action. You just got to try, you got to keep trying, keep doing things, keep iterating. So there's too much, there's too much to count, but I got maybe a couple things just top of mind. One, scaling is hard, right? So we never, so that's just been an ongoing challenge. We've never, and maybe partly related to that, we never thought big. So we weren't building to scale. We were just, building what we thought was right. And it ended up being very bespoke, very customized, and that created product complexity. And of course, that was also just trying to do right by our members. We get feedback from our members and they want this and they want that, or they suggest this and great ideas. And so we would just do it. So everything we did was just sort of fueled by member feedback. And when we were, nimble and quick to move and able to do those things. And so that led to a lot of complexity in our product offering, frankly, that makes it really hard to scale. So that was looking back, but you don't know, like we never, again, like if you would have asked me 8 years ago when when I looking back, I spent a year hemming and hawing about whether there's even a business here. And could I justify leaving this great job that I had at Target to go try something? And when I had just like we had just had our first baby so we had no idea where this would go. And so we never thought big. So that's maybe an easy thing to point to now and say, we should plan for scale. So that's one. And then frankly, that's why,
that's great.
That's why we looked for a home and why we ended up finding an amazing home with World 50. And we were really clear saying we're looking for someone to help us scale, and World 50 has done an incredible job of doing that. And so that's been a lot of fun now in these last couple of years.
Hindsight's 2020. It's very easy to look back and be like, wow, that was a really easy decision knowing what I know now. But at the time, I'm sure it was much closer to a 50-50 decision.
Oh, yeah.
That, just pushed over the edge. So, it's funny to look back on those things. I think that's every business, with scaling. I've been in, the recruiting world for over a decade, and there's plenty of things I would have done differently and changed and built to scale is specifically one I could talk about for quite a while. I definitely have made some changes in the last 6 months to my team to make us, a lot more scalable, which has been fantastic. But, while you're really busy and while things are going well, it's hard to change up anything. You're just trying to stay above water and keep performing, for your clients and for your members. So makes sense. We've all been there. I live by the mindset that if you're not making mistakes, you're not taking enough risk.
Yes.
And, if you're too thoughtful and you're too hesitant to do something, by the time you've thought of the perfect way to do it, you could have just gotten two things wrong and gotten the third thing right quicker. So,
totally agree. It's a great lesson.
Any other lessons you've learned in scaling this business? I think it's interesting that you've scaled this business and your team has scaled this business so well, and then in turn you've helped the companies participating scale their businesses. So I think you have a very unique perspective on this.
Maybe some of the guiding principles that I'd say Josh and I in the team have tried to follow. One, just the power of MVP, right? So thinking, especially when you're getting started, it's about keeping costs as low as possible and finding the lowest effort way to try new things and validate product market fit. So MVPing, that kind of MVP philosophy is huge in that vein, and continue to do so, and be able to keep costs down and be profitable from day one. So that was important for us. I think I mentioned the power of the partnership. Having a great partner is so critical. I couldn't imagine going it alone. So having the right partner or partners was a huge key to, I think, our success. And then kind of to the sort of maybe alluding to this a bit, but you don't have to go for a home run. I feel like there's pressure. People are trying to be the next $1 billion startup, get that $1 billion valuation. And Josh and I joke about this all the time. There's nothing wrong with singles and doubles. Let's just go for the right. So I would say avoid that pressure to feel like you have to hit a home run and just go for singles and doubles.
Yeah, small wins, incremental gains, can be, really impactful over time. That's really, really good insight. You've seen a lot of companies come through EHIR and do very, very, very well. I would say a disproportional amount. I don't think there's a unicorn in the space who hasn't been affiliated with EHIR at one point or another. When people ask me what it is, I, give them a brief explanation. And, I would say it's a prerequisite to being successful. You need to, go through the program, to follow in other companies' footsteps that have done well. After seeing all these different companies scale, and, I've seen a handful where not all the founders are similar. There's a lot of different personalities, a lot of people from different backgrounds, people who have been successful before, some people that might be first-time founders. There's no perfect prototype, but they do have certain things in common more often than not. So what would you say you look for, and what would be crucial traits of a founding CEO that puts them maybe a leg up on the competition? What are things a lot of these really successful founders have had in common that you've noticed?
Yeah. Well, you're right, by the way. There is no, there's all different types. That's for sure. Multiple pathways. But it's a great question. I think a few things that come to mind. One is, and some of this is maybe looking back a little bit and how were we able to get to where we are? Certainly a lot of the companies, all of the companies that have come through EHIR have done way better. But, one, you have to have almost an irrational confidence, right? There's such a high level of risk tolerance that you need. And an unwavering conviction. So you have to have really high conviction, really high confidence in what you're doing, and you have to stay committed to that because you're going to get a lot of people that'll say no along the way or try to talk you out of it. So that's really important. That's a critical trait. You also have to have a ton of just comfort and ambiguity as you're, especially from that 0 to 1 phase. It's just a lot of unknowns that you're navigating. And then speed to action, willingness to just do something, right? We've talked about this a little bit already. It's come up a couple times, but there's really two types of people, right? There's dreamers and there's doers. So you have to be willing to and that's what separates entrepreneurs, right? Is you have to be willing to take that leap. You have to be willing to do something, and then and keep iterating on it, and then stay convicted as you go, right? So that's something I've noticed more recently is you start questioning what you're doing or how you're doing it, and things can start to unravel. So keep maintaining that conviction, and your purpose and your mission is critical.
Yeah. And I think with conviction comes that like glass half full mentality, where very optimistic. Hey, you get a no, you're not hearing no, you're hearing not yet.
100%.
And that's a very different thing. I was actually talking with one of, a candidate I've worked with for years, placed before, just to really become friends. And, was just giving some friendly advice around, how important positive thinking is.
Oh my God.
And, especially when you're starting at a new company, in a, market that might be kind of new, like it might not be an existing category, you're going to get a lot of rejection. Like that's just comes with the territory. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But I sent him a meme or something that basically said, I think it was Confucius, that said this. The people that think that they're going to succeed and the people that think they aren't going to succeed, they're both right. Yep. Because if you already have the preconceived notion that, I don't know, it's getting hard, there's all these issues, I don't know if it's going to work out, you're probably right. If you're like, hey, like it's difficult, but like I'm going to get through this, I'll figure out a way. Like those are the people that typically succeed. So I think a lot of the CEOs I've seen, whether they're introverts, extroverts, come from a technology background, marketing background, sales background, operating background, whatever it may be, a lot of them tend to be optimists.
I couldn't agree more. It's confidence, it's optimism, it's energy, it's enthusiasm, drive, right? You have to be driven. You have to be hungry, right? So one of our family mottos is right or wrong, go strong.
I love it. That's good. I have a 18-month-old daughter. I'm not teaching her any lessons like that yet, but that's a good one to keep in mind.
We have, it's fun. It's a fun thing with the kids. So now our kids are 5 and 7, and we've now, maybe it's become a bit of a game, but we now have a growing list of family mottos, and we get together over dinner, and anyone can introduce a new one, but we vote as a family to ratify. But right or wrong, go strong was one of the first. Teamwork makes the dream work is another one. Try everything.
I love those. That's fantastic. And I have an actual question for you, and I want to like preface it with like my hypothesis here. I think there was a lot of noise in the market over the last couple of years of, is digital health here to stay? There's a disproportionate amount of unicorns. Like, is this actually a really strong market, or is it the economy, or was it COVID or whatever? I think actually, what we just talked about, like what makes a great CEO, what makes a great founder, I think a key piece of it is being mission driven. I think when the CEO lives, breathes, sleeps the mission of the company, it's very mission driven. Maybe it's, something that impacted this CEO personally, whether it be themselves or their family, which I think is a pretty common trend. Those companies tend to do well when like the CEO lives it, breathes it, sleeps it, and they walk the walk. That's my hypothesis why the space has done so well and why there is a disproportionate amount of companies that have reached huge valuations, and why I think it will continue is because these CEOs are mission driven. Those companies tend to be more successful because, they're very charismatic folks that, are followed by their employees because they know they're being genuine. They're not just in it to make as much money as possible. There's like a greater purpose. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox. Like, what would you say about the, future of digital health and, some of the noise that's been around there?
Well, let me just say, I think what you said is brilliant. I couldn't agree more. And it ties back to a few of the things we talked about, right? Like healthcare is so personal. It impacts all of us. we all have those personal stories, and that fuels conviction, and that fuels that mission and purpose. And so I think you're spot on. I can look across all the founders that have come through. They have such powerful personal stories that drives them and the missions for their companies. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah, and as for the future, who the heck knows?
Yeah, my next question was like, what are some bold predictions you'll make about digital health over the next decade? I think I could ask this to everyone I have on this podcast going forward, but I think your perspective's unique is because you see so much of the innovation at a very early stage. So, they don't have to be bold. You could have lukewarm predictions, but anything that you think is either going to, change or accelerate in the coming decade?
Yeah, it's, gosh, I don't know. I mean, you have this AI explosion right now that's just such a game changer. It's hard to say, like, that's going to disrupt everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big question that'll impact all of this. And then, going back to why we started in the first place was the power of the employer, right? Ultimately, they're the ones bearing the risk, and they are going to, rise up and take control. And and I think that's going to drive meaningful change in the PBM space and others. Where it's continuing to trend up, and it's going to break through. So maybe that's so I continue to believe in the power. Ultimately, if you step back and think about the mission, right, and what we set out to do in the first place was to bring together this group of the largest and most progressive employers, recognizing that we can leverage the collective scale and influence of this community to drive a much greater impact than any of us can do alone. And so I think we're getting close to that point, right? We now have over 100 employers in the community, and they're poised, right? These are the doers, the mavericks, the change agents.
Yeah.
They're poised to make an impact. So I'm super excited about that and what they can help drive. But then also recognize you can't do it alone, which is why we have the payer track and the provider track, right? Healthcare is super complex.
Yeah.
It is a multi-stakeholder, challenge, or can only be solved by bringing the stakeholders together. And so that opportunity to really bring payers and providers together so I think there's going to be some really interesting developments in the, bringing, providers and employers together, for example, to really drive the value-based care agenda. That's one.
Yeah, something you didn't mention when you said what you're most proud of EHIR, that I'll say what I'm most proud of you guys is the fact that these other industries have followed suit. So like they saw what you guys did in benefits and now health plan and now health system, and marketing tech is interested in doing something similar because they see the value. Same thing with legal tech, same thing with supply chain and procurement. Like you guys were innovators, not just in like benefits, but in a lot of these technology areas. And they've seen what you've done and, how successful it's been and how it's accelerated, great impact. And other industries have, kind of piggybacked and tried to learn from your team, which I think is beyond awesome and really cool just from my perspective. Cause like some of my partners, some of the other people in the firm, like they don't even understand the concept of what you guys do and why I'd be involved in it. Because many industries don't have anything like this.
Yeah. On that note, I'll say like, as we look ahead and think about maybe the evolution of this model, it's along those lines and thinking, that this is really an enterprise decision support platform that's powered by direct peer-to-peer insights and collaboration. That's where we're heading.
You guys are visionaries. We'll go back to the personal front before we wrap up. I think it's really important. What I notice, like when I go to conferences, I know you don't like them, is that like the gyms are always packed. The food options are always like really healthy. I think this like industry as a whole does a really good job of practicing what we preach. The attendance at the hotel bars wouldn't indicate that, but everything else in terms of, healthy eating, exercising, all that kind of stuff. I think on average, our space probably is more fit, more active, more health conscious than most. How do you practice what you preach? How do you try to live a healthy lifestyle from like a diet, exercise component, just personally?
Well, for starters, it helps that my wife's a dietitian. So
that's good. That's very good.
She helps a ton. She also is the true do-gooder in the family. She works at a children's hospital in the cancer clinic. So she's a saint. And
did she do that before her diagnosis as well?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
She's been there for over 10 years. And now, I mean, that's another, wonderful thing about life is she now can relate to these patients like unlike most, right? And so it's helping her a ton in her profession and with all the kiddos she works with. But to answer your question, for me personally, it's my thing is running. So that's I try to get out every day, or almost every day. That's my productivity break, my mental break. It actually, and even going back, it was something Josh and I in the early days would do running statuses. We built the business on on trails and roads running together. So running's always been a big part of my life and a big part of the business.
I know Chandler runs as well. So who would win in a race? Josh, you or Chandler?
Gosh. I'm going to have to put my money on Josh. That guy's a beast.
Okay. Fair.
And then Chandler.
He's got that runner's body, like I ran in high school, and it's the last time I ran, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Your wife's dietitian, or what's your favorite recipes she makes?
Oh gosh. We stick to the basics. We got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. I mean, we're trying to get through it. We're trying to get through it. So I'll tell you, here's a parenting hack. Something we love and our kids love. It's called Muffin Tin Monday. Muffin Tin Monday. I'll send you a picture. The kids make it. You basically take a muffin tray, right? And you find a bunch of little different variety of foods, right? All different colors, vegetables, fruits, mix. And that's their dinner. They get a little bit of everything.
Nice.
It's wonderful. Easy to make, healthy, variety. Monday. And then we do Taco Tuesday and what else?
That's good. That's good. I'll try the Muffin Tin Mondays. Those sound good. And then from like a stress reduction, obviously we're in a business where everyone's looking for results. Pressure's on, regardless of what your function is in this, very interesting high growth area. So other than running, anything else you do to kind of reduce stress and, stay even keel in a high pressure environment?
Well, one, you can't take yourself too seriously. Two,
I live by that, by the way, with my, boxing gloves.
There you go. So try to, and it's just, you got to remind yourself, right? So it's like, how do you remind yourself that, like what's most important? So for me, it's also like perspective, like every once in a while I catch myself and my wife now say, we got through cancer, right? Like, let's put this in perspective, or, and so that's that. I think just, being able to pause and reflect and sort of take stock on, and does this really matter? Is this really worth getting stressed about? And so that, having, just not taking yourself too seriously, and then taking productivity breaks, right? Whether it's a run, for me, it's a run, but whatever it is, like middle of the day, I think is great. You can't just sit, especially as a lot of us are remote now and we're zooming from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom. You got to take a break from that, step up, walk around. It's okay. That's what I would say.
Yeah, on a lot of my business calls, I go into the Cleveland Metro Parks and I walk the trails as I'm on the phone. So thank you for everyone who has, been very thoughtful and very open to, hearing a little background noise on those calls. I just wanted to thank you all. And thank you, Michael. First and foremost, I couldn't think of a better first guest for this video interview podcast series. And thank you for joining. Thank you for stepping into the ring with me. And
I was nervous. Thank you. Thanks.
No, you were fantastic. I think the viewers and listeners are really going to enjoy it. And
no, man, I mean, I was nervous about the boxing gloves. I didn't know what you were going to do.
Yeah, no, it's just a quirky, like a prop, just to hopefully gain some following and interest. But last question, actually, who would you recommend as future guests on the podcast? I've got a running list of several dozen people, but I'm going to ask every single person on here any you'd suggest, and we'll add them to the list.
I have a long list for you. It wouldn't be fair to just mention one or two. I have a long
list. Okay. We'll sidebar later. Sidebar later. I don't want you to have to pick any favorites, but I will ask. Thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below if you enjoyed it.